A corporate thug slapped a 76-year-old widow in a Christmas mall thinking she was nobody. He had no idea her son was a Hell's Angel and that by tomorrow morning, 500 motorcycles would be rolling into Seattle demanding justice. Before we dive into this story, I want to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments below. My daughters think this is a goal too huge for me, so let's prove them wrong. Hit that subscribe button right now. Now, let's get into the story. The Harley's engine cut through the silence of a Seattle dawn like a chainsaw through ice. 500 miles in 8 hours. Hendricks Compton hadn't stopped once, hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. The video played on loop in his mind. His mother's face, the sound of that slap echoing across marble floors, the way she fell into those Christmas gift boxes like a rag doll. Interstate 90 had never felt longer. Now, as he downshifted through the empty streets of Ballard. At 5:47 a.m., the neighborhood looked smaller than he remembered. 15 years does that to a place, or maybe it does that to a man. The old Scandinavian bakery on the corner was now a tech startup. The hardware store where his father bought paint every spring was a yoga studio. But his mother's house, that little blue Craftsman with the white trim, that was exactly the same. Hendricks killed the engine 2 houses down. The sudden silence felt wrong, like the calm before a storm that was already here. His breath misted in the December cold as he pulled off his riding gloves, his hands shaking, not from the temperature, from something else entirely. He'd left this house the day after his father's funeral, told his mother he couldn't breathe in this town anymore, that he needed to ride, needed to find his brothers on the road. She'd stood on that same porch, tears streaming down her face, begging him not to go. He went anyway. That was the last time they'd spoken face to face. Christmas cards came every year, forwarded through the clubhouse. She never missed his birthday. He called twice a year, her birthday and Mother's Day, conversations that lasted exactly 4 minutes before the weight of everything unsaid crushed them both into silence. Now he was walking up that cracked concrete path, his boots heavy as anvils, and he could see the light on in the kitchen window. She was awake. Of course she was awake. The video had gone viral 18 hours ago. Half of America had seen it by now. His phone had blown up with messages from brothers across 3 states, all saying the same thing. "Hendricks, that your mom?" His knuckles hovered over the door. Part of him, the part that had run 15 years ago, wanted to turn around, get back on that bike, and disappear into the mountains. But that video changed everything. The bruise on her cheekbone, the way she'd looked up at that piece of trash in the suit, with nothing but dignity in her eyes, refusing to beg. She'd raised him better than to run. The door opened before he could knock. Mrs. Eleanor Compton stood there in her bathrobe, silver hair unpinned and falling around her shoulders, and the left side of her face was purple and swollen. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then her hand came up to her mouth, and her eyes filled with tears she'd probably been holding back for 18 hours. "Hendricks," she whispered. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, and she collapsed against his chest, shaking. No words, not yet. Because what do you say when you've been gone for 15 years, and it takes your mother getting assaulted in a shopping mall to bring you home? What do you say when you realize you should have come back a long time ago? The sun was rising over Puget Sound, painting the sky the color of blood and gold, and Hendricks Compton made a promise standing in that doorway. Whoever did this to his mother was going to learn something about loyalty, about family, about what happens when you hurt someone under the protection of the Brotherhood. Seattle was about to remember why you don't mess with a Hell's Angel's mother. The coffee was cold by the time Eleanor finally spoke. They sat at the kitchen table where Hendricks had eaten breakfast for 18 years, where his father used to read the Sunday paper, where life had been normal once. The bruise on her face looked worse in the morning light, angry purple spreading toward her eye. Hendricks's jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. "It wasn't the first time," she said quietly, staring into her mug. "Roland Willis. He works for some developer who wants to buy the neighborhood. Marcus Brennan, I think. They've been circling for months." Hendricks pulled out his phone. The video had 2.3 million views now. Comments flooded in by the thousands. Strangers across America demanding justice, calling for Willis's arrest, tagging the Seattle Police Department. But what caught his eye was something else. A notification from an account called MyR Seattle 17. The girl who'd filmed it. She'd sent him a direct message. "Your mom didn't deserve that. Nobody did. I have more videos if you need them." His thumb hovered over the reply button. More videos? What the hell did that mean? Eleanor touched his hand. "Hendricks, I don't want you doing anything that'll put you back in—" "I'm not going back to prison, Ma." His voice came out harder than he meant. "But I'm not letting this slide either." The doorbell rang. Through the window, Hendricks saw a news van parked on the street, a reporter adjusting her hair in a compact mirror. 2 more vans pulled up behind her. Within seconds, cameras were aimed at the house like weapons. "Jesus," Eleanor whispered. "They've been here since yesterday." Hendricks stood, his chair scraping against linoleum. The reporter was already halfway up the walk, microphone in hand, cameraman trailing behind. She knocked, smiled that professional smile they all had, the one that didn't reach the eyes. He opened the door, 6 inches. "Private property." "Mr. Compton, I'm Jessica Morrow with King 5 News. The video of your mother's assault has gone viral. Do you have a statement about—" "Yeah, get off my mother's porch. The public is demanding answers. Roland Willis hasn't been arrested, don't you think—" Hendricks stepped outside, closing the door behind him. He was a head taller than the cameraman, twice as wide, and the look on his face made the reporter take an involuntary step back. Good. She should be nervous. "You want a statement? Here's your statement. That man put his hands on a 76-year-old woman in front of Christmas shoppers. That man works for a developer who's been harassing people in this neighborhood for months. And that man is about to learn what accountability looks like in America when you mess with the wrong family." The camera was eating it up. Jessica Morrow's eyes lit up like she'd just won the lottery. "Are you threatening Roland Willis?" "I'm promising him something better than threats." Hendricks leaned closer to the microphone. "I'm promising him the truth will come out. Every bit of it." He walked back inside and locked the door. Through the window, he watched Jessica Morrow practically sprint to her van, already rehearsing her lead. His phone buzzed. A text from Reaper, his road captain out of Tacoma. "Brother, you need backup?" Hendricks typed fast. "Not yet, but soon." Another buzz. This time Maya's message. "Mr. Compton, the security guard at the mall has footage. Weeks of it. Willis has been stalking your mom." His blood went cold. Weeks, not a one-time thing. A campaign, organized intimidation. His fingers moved before his brain caught up, typing a response. "Can you get me his name?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Tyler Chen. He wants to help. Says he's tired of watching rich people get away with everything." Hendricks looked at his mother through the kitchen doorway. She was washing dishes now, her hands shaking slightly, trying to maintain normalcy in a world that had just exploded. This was bigger than one slap, bigger than one bully in an expensive suit. This was Seattle versus corporate greed, David versus Goliath. And Hendricks Compton had just decided which side he was on. He opened his contacts and scrolled to a number he hadn't called in 3 years. Ghost, president of the Bellingham Charter. When he answered, Hendricks didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Ghost, it's Hendricks. I need to call a ride." Tyler Chen's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he burned the footage onto the USB drive. His supervisor had left for lunch, which gave him exactly 43 minutes to copy everything without getting caught. The security office at Westlake Center was empty except for him and the hum of 24 monitors showing every angle of the mall. He'd been watching Roland Willis for 6 weeks. The first time, Tyler thought it was coincidence. Willis browsing the same stores as an elderly woman, always staying 20 feet back. The second time, Tyler started paying attention. The third time, he started recording. By week 4, he knew he was watching a crime in progress, psychological warfare designed to break someone's will. Mrs. Compton would arrive around 10 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday, always alone, always dignified in her pressed slacks and cardigan. Willis would appear within minutes, following, looming, getting close enough to whisper things Tyler couldn't hear on camera but could read in her body language, the way her shoulders tensed, the way she'd grip her purse tighter. Once Willis had cornered her by the fountain and pointed at his phone, showing her something that made her face go pale. Tyler had zoomed in, enhanced the image frame by frame at home that night, property records, demolition permits, her house marked for acquisition and removal. The slap was just the moment it became visible to the world. Tyler ejected the drive and slipped it into his jacket pocket. His phone buzzed. A message from that girl Maya who'd filmed the assault. They'd connected through Instagram after she'd posted the video. Turned out she worked at the Starbucks on the second floor. Had been watching Willis too. "Did you get it?" "Yeah. Meeting Hendricks Compton at Pike Place in an hour." His heart hammered. This could cost him his job. Could get him blacklisted from every security gig in Seattle. But Tyler's own grandmother had been pushed out of her Chinatown apartment last year by a developer, forced into a nursing home she hated. She'd died 6 months later, heartbroken and displaced. Some things were worth risking everything for. His supervisor's voice crackled through the radio. "Chen, you there?" Tyler grabbed the radio. "Yeah, I'm here." Corporate called. They want all footage from the Willis incident scrubbed from the backup servers. Legal team's orders. Tyler's stomach dropped. "Scrubbed? That's evidence. Not our problem. Just do it." The line went dead. Tyler stared at the USB drive in his hand. They were already trying to erase her, trying to make it like it never happened. But they were too late. He'd made 3 copies, one for Hendricks, one for the Seattle Times, and one for his safety deposit box at the bank. He locked the security office and headed for the employee exit. Outside, Seattle was doing its winter thing. Gray skies, mist that wasn't quite rain, the smell of coffee and Puget Sound salt water. His bus wouldn't leave for 20 minutes, so he walked toward Pike Place Market, hands jammed in his pockets, feeling the weight of the drive like it was made of lead. A black SUV pulled up alongside him. Tinted windows, no plates on the front. Tyler's instincts screamed. He walked faster. The window rolled down. A man in a suit, not Willis, someone else, someone who looked like he'd been hired specifically to intimidate people, smiled without warmth. "Tyler Chen?" Tyler didn't answer, started to run, but the SUV swerved in front of him, blocking the sidewalk. 2 more men got out. "Mr. Brennan would like a word." Hendricks sat at a corner table in the Pike Place Market coffee shop, watching tourists take pictures of fish getting thrown across ice. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Tyler Chen was late, 30 minutes late. That wasn't right. Maya Rodriguez slid into the chair across from him, her barista apron still on, eyes wide with fear. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "Tyler texted me 20 minutes ago. Just one word. Trouble." Hendricks's blood went ice cold. "Where?" "I don't know. His location services went dark right after." Hendricks pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Reaper answered on the first ring. "Talk to me. I need you to find someone. Tyler Chen, 23, security guard at Westlake Center. Last seen near Pike Place 30 minutes ago. Might be in trouble." "On it." Maya was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. "This is my fault. I told him to contact you. I thought—" "Hey!" Hendricks's voice was firm but not unkind. "You did the right thing. Tyler did the right thing. This isn't on you. This is on them." His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just an image. Tyler Chen, sitting in a chair in what looked like an office, blood running from his nose, 2 men in suits standing behind him. The message was clear. Back off, or the kid gets hurt worse. Hendricks stared at the photo for exactly 3 seconds. Then he forwarded it to Reaper, to Ghost, to every brother in Washington state. He typed one message to go with it. "They just escalated. Ride for Eleanor starts now, not next week. Now." Within minutes, his phone exploded. Confirmations rolling in from Tacoma, Bellingham, Spokane, even Portland. Brothers dropping everything, mounting up, heading north. The corporate thugs thought they were playing hardball. They had no idea what hardball actually looked like. Maya grabbed his arm. "What are we going to do?" Hendricks stood, dropping cash on the table for his untouched coffee. His reflection stared back at him from the window. A man who'd spent 15 years learning how to be someone his mother wouldn't recognize. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly who she needed right now. "We're going to teach Marcus Brennan and his trained dogs a lesson they should have learned in kindergarten," Hendricks said. "You don't get to bully people just because you've got money. Not in America. Not in my city." He walked out into the Seattle afternoon, and somewhere in the distance, the first rumble of thunder rolled across the mountains. Except it wasn't thunder. It was engines. Dozens of them, coming from every direction. The Brotherhood was awake. Marcus Brennan's corner office on the 42nd floor of the Columbia Center had a view that made people forget how to breathe. Elliott Bay stretching west toward the Olympics. The Space Needle toy-sized below, the whole city spread out like he owned it, which in many ways he did. 3 city council members in his pocket, the police chief on his Christmas card list, and enough lawyers to drown any problem in paperwork until it suffocated. But today, Marcus wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at his phone, watching a video that had cost him $3 million in pooled investments in the last 12 hours. "Explain to me," he said quietly, "how we're sitting here with a viral video, national news coverage, and every bleeding heart liberal in America calling for our heads." Roland Willis sat across the desk, ice pack pressed to his jaw, where one of Marcus's other employees had punched him this morning. Turns out assaulting elderly women on camera was bad for business. Who knew? "It was handled," Willis muttered. "She was supposed to cave weeks ago. Everyone else did. Everyone else didn't have a son in the Hells Angels, you idiot. David Kemp, Marcus's lawyer, paced by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, arguing with someone at City Hall. He hung up and turned, his expression grim. We've got a problem. The mayor's office is distancing themselves. They're calling for a full investigation. Marcus laughed, sharp and bitter. Of course they are. Rats always jump ship when it's sinking. What about our friend at the precinct? Captain Morrison says his hands are tied. Too much public pressure. The Seattle Times is running a front-page story tomorrow. Developers enforcer assaults widow in Christmas attack. They're painting you as the villain behind Willis. I am the villain behind Willis. That's literally his job description. Marcus stood, loosening his tie. What about the security guard, Chen? We've got him. He's cooperative now. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Define cooperative. He understands that releasing any additional footage would be bad for his health. And the footage he already copied? Kemp hesitated. That hesitation told Marcus everything he needed to know. He gave it to the biker, Marcus said flatly. Didn't he? We're not sure. He had a USB drive when we picked him up, but what, David? He'd already been to the bank. Safety deposit box. We can't access it without a warrant, and no judge is going to give us one. Marcus walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Below, the city moved like an anthill. Thousands of people who had no idea their neighborhoods were about to be erased, rebuilt, and resold at triple the price. Progress. That's what they called it in the boardrooms. Gentrification. That's what they called it on the street. Marcus didn't care what they called it, as long as the money kept rolling in. But this Compton woman, this one stubborn old lady who refused to sell, who kept her dignity even when Willis slapped it off her face. She was going to cost him everything if he didn't shut this down fast. Get me a meeting with Hendricks Compton, Marcus said. Kemp and Willis both stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Sir, you can't negotiate with... I'm not negotiating, I'm buying him off. Everyone has a price. Bikers, politicians, priests. Find his price. And if he doesn't have one? Marcus turned from the window, his face carved from stone. Then we make sure he has too many problems to worry about an old woman's house. Parole violations, drug charges, I don't care. Make him radioactive. Make him wish he'd stayed on the road. Willis shifted uncomfortably. Boss, these guys don't scare easy. Neither do I. That's why I'm up here and you're down there bleeding. Marcus pointed at the door. Both of you, get out, and find me a solution before this becomes a class action lawsuit and a federal investigation. They left. Marcus stood alone in his empire of glass and steel, watching the sun set over Seattle. Somewhere down there, an old woman was drinking tea in her little blue house, probably praying to her dead husband for strength. Somewhere else, her son was rallying his gang of leather-clad thugs, thinking they could fight money with muscle. Marcus had built a fortune understanding one simple truth. There was no problem money couldn't solve. And if money didn't work, fear did. He picked up his phone and made a call. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Rough, cold, Eastern European accent. Mr. Brennan. Dmitri, I need your services. Of course. The usual terms. Marcus watched his reflection in the darkening window. Double the usual. And Dmitri, this time I needed to send a message. The line went silent for a moment. Then, understood. Who is the target? Marcus Brennan smiled. A motorcycle. Sunday morning broke over Seattle like a promise. Hendricks stood on the roof of a parking garage in Georgetown, watching the sunrise paint Mount Rainier pink and gold on the horizon. Below him the sound was building, a low rumble that vibrated in his chest, in his bones, in the part of his soul that had been empty since he left home. They were coming. From the north, the Bellingham charter rolled in first, 23 bikes, Ghost leading with his black and silver softail, the club patch on his back catching the light. From the south, Portland sent 37, their road captain Mercy riding point with an American flag mounted on his sissy bar. From the east, Spokane brought the thunder, 42 bikes, straight pipe exhausts that sounded like freedom and fury rolled into one. By 8 a.m., the parking garage held over 300 motorcycles, and they were still coming. Reaper pulled up beside Hendricks, killing his engine. "Brother, this is the biggest turnout I've seen since the Veterans Memorial Ride in '09. "It's bigger than that," Ghost said, climbing off his bike. "I got word from Everett, Olympia, even Vancouver, BC. We're looking at 500 bikes by noon, maybe more." Hendricks pulled out his phone. The video of his confrontation with the news reporter had been clipped and shared everywhere. His words, "That man is about to learn what accountability looks like in America when you mess with the wrong family," had become a rallying cry. Strangers were posting it with hashtags, #Ride for Eleanor, #Justice for Compton, #Biker Nation. But what caught his eye was a new post from Tyler Chen. The kid had escaped somehow, posted a message from a hospital bed where he was being treated for a broken nose and cracked ribs. The post read, "Marcus Brennan's guys tried to silence me. They failed. USB drive is with someone you trust. Drop coming soon." The comments were flooding in. Outrage, support, promises of legal help. Someone had tagged the FBI's Seattle field office. Someone else had tagged the Washington State Attorney General. This was spiraling beyond anything Hendricks had imagined. What started as a son defending his mother was becoming something else entirely. A referendum on whether rich people could still buy their way out of consequences in America. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hendricks Compton?" A smooth voice, educated, the kind of voice that came from private schools and country clubs. "Who's asking?" "My name is Marcus Brennan. I believe we have a mutual interest in resolving this situation quietly." Hendricks's hand tightened around the phone. This was the man, the puppet master, the reason his mother's face was purple. "I don't have quiet conversations with people who send thugs after old women." "Mr. Compton, I understand you're upset, but let's be reasonable. Your mother's property is worth, what, maybe $400,000 in today's market? I'm prepared to offer her $750,000, cash, tax-free settlement in exchange for her signature in an NDA. You think this is about money? Everything is about money. That's how the world works." Hendricks looked at the sea of motorcycles around him. Brothers who'd dropped everything to stand with a stranger's mother because it was the right thing to do. Men who society wrote off as criminals, outlaws, troublemakers. Men who understood loyalty better than any corporate shark ever would. "Let me tell you how my world works, Brennan. You hurt someone under my protection, you answer for it. No buyouts, no NDAs, no making it disappear." "I see. Well, that's disappointing. I had hoped we could be civil about this." "Civil? You want civil? Your boy Willis slapped a 76-year-old woman in front of Christmas shoppers. You kidnapped a security guard and beat him. You think cutting a check makes that civil?" Brennan's voice lost its smooth edge. "Mr. Compton, I'm giving you one chance to walk away from this. Take your mother, take the money, and go back to whatever roadhouse you crawled out of. Because if you insist on making this a war, You will lose. I have resources you can't imagine. And I have something you can't buy." Hendricks looked at his brothers, men who'd ridden through the night, through the cold, through everything, just to stand up for what was right. "I have people who actually give a damn." He hung up. Ghost raised an eyebrow. "That was him?" "Yeah." "What'd you tell him?" Hendricks smiled, cold and hard. "I told him to buckle up." By 11 a.m. the parking garage was full. Bikes lined the streets for 6 blocks in every direction. News helicopters circled overhead. Seattle PD had sent patrol cars, not to arrest anyone, but because they had no choice. When 500 bikers decided to roll, you either guided traffic or got run over. Hendricks addressed the crowd from the roof of a van, his voice carrying over the rumble of idling engines. "Brothers, sisters, we ride today for Eleanor Compton, but we ride for something bigger. We ride for every person who's been bullied by corporate greed, every family pushed out of their home, every neighborhood is erased for condos and coffee shops. Today, we remind Seattle that justice isn't just for people who can afford lawyers. We ride peaceful. We ride legal. But we ride loud." The response was a roar of engines that shook the ground. 500 bikes firing up in unison, a symphony of American steel and horsepower. Hendricks swung onto his Harley, and the convoy rolled out. They rode through downtown Seattle in formation, taking up all 3 lanes, past the Columbia Center where Marcus Brennan watched from his office, past City Hall where politicians suddenly remembered they had spines, past Westlake Center where it all started, where Christmas shoppers stopped and stared and pulled out their phones to record history in motion. The sound was biblical, apocalyptic, beautiful. And when they reached Eleanor Compton's little blue house in Ballard, she stood on the porch with tears streaming down her face, surrounded by 500 people who'd never met her but would have died to protect her. Because that's what America was supposed to be. FBI Special Agent Sarah Hayworth stood in her office in the federal building, watching the biker convoy through her window with a mixture of admiration and concern. Her phone had been ringing off the hook since yesterday. Tips, complaints, demands for investigation. The viral video, the developer, the beaten security guard. This whole thing was a powder keg looking for a match. Her partner, Agent Marcus Webb, knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "You seeing this? Hard to miss 500 motorcycles. Seattle PD is asking if we're going to intervene." Sarah shook her head. "Intervene in what? They're riding legally. Permits are filed. This is a peaceful demonstration." "For now. But if this turns violent, it won't. Not from their side." Sarah turned from the window, her jaw set. "I've been reading the file on Marcus Brennan. This isn't the first time he's used intimidation to acquire property. We've got complaints going back 5 years. Small business owners, homeowners, even a church. But nothing ever stuck because witnesses get paid off or disappear." Webb raised an eyebrow. "You think this is bigger than one assault?" "I think this is RICO territory if we can prove pattern and practice. And that security guard, Tyler Chen, he's willing to talk. I spoke with him this morning at the hospital." "What did he give you?" Sarah pulled a USB drive from her desk drawer. 6 weeks of surveillance footage showing systematic harassment, plus financial records he shouldn't have access to but somehow does, wire transfers, shell companies. Brennan's been using intimidation as a business model. Webb whistled low. "That's enough for a warrant. That's enough for a whole task force." Sarah grabbed her jacket. "Call the U.S. attorney. Tell them we're moving on this today, and get a team to Brennan's office. I want his computers, his files, and his phone records." "What about the bikers?" Sarah smiled. "What about them?" "They're doing our job for us, keeping everyone's eyes on this story so Brennan can't make it disappear. Sometimes the good guys wear leather instead of badges." 2 hours later, FBI agents walked into the Columbia Center with warrants. Marcus Brennan was in the middle of a conference call when they knocked on his office door. He opened it with a smile that died the second he saw the badges. "Marcus Brennan, you're under investigation for racketeering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit assault. We have warrants to seize all electronic devices and financial records." Brennan's lawyer, David Kemp, jumped up. "This is outrageous. You can't just—" "We can, and we are." Agent Hayworth stepped past him, motioning to her team. "Bag everything. Computers, phones, hard drives. And Mr. Kemp, you might want to get your own lawyer. Your name's all over these wire transfers, too." Roland Willis was arrested in his apartment in Belltown an hour later, still icing his jaw, still believing money would save him. It wouldn't. Tyler Chen's testimony and the viral video were enough to charge him with assault. The rest would come later, when they flipped him against Brennan, when fear made him talk. By sunset, Seattle news was exploding with the story. FBI raids developer's office. Corruption investigation expands. The bikers hadn't thrown a single punch, hadn't broken a single law. They'd just shown up, stood together, and let their presence remind powerful people that Americans were watching. Hendricks sat on his mother's porch as the last light faded, watching his brothers ride away in groups, heading home to their own lives. Ghost stopped, killed his engine. "Hell of a day, brother." "Hell of a day. You did right by her. Your old man would have been proud." Hendricks nodded, not trusting his voice. Ghost kicked his bike back to life and rode off into the Seattle twilight, leaving Hendricks alone with the sound of his mother humming in the kitchen. He'd come home thinking he'd lost the right to this life. Turned out, he'd never lost it at all. 3 weeks later, Christmas Eve arrived quiet and cold. Roland Willis had taken a plea deal, 2 years in county jail, permanent restraining order, and he'd testified against Marcus Brennan in exchange for avoiding federal charges. Brennan himself was looking at 15 years on racketeering and fraud. David Kemp had flipped too, giving prosecutors enough evidence to bring down half the corrupt development network in Seattle. The neighborhood in Ballard that was supposed to be demolished? The city council voted unanimously to designate it a historic preservation zone. Eleanor Compton's house was safe. So were her neighbors. Turns out, when enough people paid attention, politicians remembered they worked for voters, not developers. Tyler Chen recovered from his injuries and quit his security job. Last Hendricks heard, he was enrolling at the University of Washington to study criminal justice. Maya Rodriguez had been offered a scholarship by a nonprofit that supported young activists. Good things were happening. But tonight, Christmas Eve, Hendricks sat at his mother's table with nowhere else to be, and no desire to be anywhere else. She'd cooked her famous pot roast, the one his father used to request every year. The house smelled like pine from the tree in the corner, and cinnamon from the candles burning on the mantel. "I wish your father could see this," Eleanor said softly, setting down her fork. "See you here, home." "Me too, Ma. He never blamed you for leaving, you know. He understood you needed to find your own way." Hendricks looked at the empty chair where his father used to sit, where he'd dispensed wisdom in between bites of mashed potatoes, where he'd taught Hendricks that being a man meant protecting people weaker than yourself, standing up when it was hard, and never letting money decide what was right. "I should have come back sooner. You came back when I needed you. That's all that matters." Eleanor reached across the table and took his hand. "You know what the best gift you gave me was? Not the justice. not the FBI investigation. It was watching you stand up in front of all those people and refuse to be bought. You reminded me that I raised my son right." Hendrix's throat tightened. "I learned it from you. And Dad." They finished dinner in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when you've said everything that needed saying. Later, Hendrix helped her wash dishes while Bing Crosby crooned White Christmas on the old radio. Outside, snow had started to fall. Rare for Seattle, magical for Christmas Eve. At midnight, Hendrix pulled on his leather jacket, getting ready to head back to his motel. Eleanor stopped him at the door. "Will you come back? Not just for emergencies, for holidays, for Sunday dinners." He looked at this woman who'd stood alone for 15 years, who'd kept the light on in the window every night, hoping her son would find his way home, who'd never stopped loving him, even when he'd made it hard. "Yeah, Ma, I'll come back." She hugged him tight, this tiny, fierce woman who'd taken on a corporate empire with nothing but dignity and a son she'd prayed would remember where he came from. When she let go, her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. Hendrix walked to his Harley, threw his leg over, and looked back at the house. The Christmas lights twinkled. His mother waved from the window. And for the first time in 15 years, Hendrix Compton felt like he was exactly where he belonged. He started the engine, and the rumble echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Not a threat this time, but a promise. A promise that he'd be back, that family mattered, that some things were worth fighting for. He rode through Seattle's empty streets, snow falling softly, the city sleeping under a blanket of white. The road stretched ahead, dark and endless, full of possibility. But now Hendrix knew something he hadn't known before. The road would always be there. But home? Home only existed because someone kept the light on. Someone believed you'd come back. Someone loved you even when you made it hard. He pointed his bike toward the motel, but his heart stayed behind in that little blue house where a mother's prayers had finally been answered. Not with perfection, not with a Hollywood ending, but with a son who showed up when it mattered most. And sometimes in America, that's exactly what justice looks like. If you believe that standing up for family and fighting corporate bullies is what can make America great again, like and share this story. Subscribe now for more stories like this. Also check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you.